to give thanks to all the quarterbacks that throw my dad the football. You are all greatly appreciated.
Boom or bust. Feast or famine. Trevon Diggs is developing quite the reputation, and it seems he split fans down the middle on how we should all feel about his play. So in this video, we're going to dissect both arguments. We're going to stay open-minded and evaluate how such a divisive player both helps and hurts his team. Diggs has always been a ball hawk who takes advantage of bad throws. He also has wide receiver skills, sometimes to the point where you think you're watching Trevon Diggs run a route and catch a ball. To be honest, Trevon could easily be playing wide receiver in the NFL. It's no wonder how he has all these skills. Going back to high school, he had multiple 1,000-yard seasons and played the position as a true freshman for Nick Saban. When he made the switch, we quickly realized that he can read the quarterback as well as the routes about to be run by the receiver. Really is a special skill set. And that's why he's leading the NFL with 11 interceptions this year. That's 4 more than the next closest in J.C. Jackson. Interceptions not only create a turnover, but they also have the potential to swing momentum like no other play in football. Of course, his latest interception was a great example of this because it pretty much kickstarted the Washington blowout. And these picks have been the freshest breath of air for Cowboys fans, with Diggs already racking up more INTs than the entire team has had in previous years. When you think about 11 interceptions, that can certainly swing multiple games in your favor. We'll get into the yards allowed stuff later, but the positive spin on it would be a bend but don't break, opportunistic play style. You could argue that in the end, who cares about the yards allowed if it doesn't hurt the scoreboard? More than the turnovers would help the scoreboard. I do think yards allowed are important because that traditionally correlates with points allowed. You don't need me to tell you that. But there could be more defining defensive stats when considering a win or loss. Turnovers is one of them. Obviously, red zone percentage and third down stops would greatly affect the game as well. Now, another thing to think about is when you hear these TV announcers call back in history to the last times a player reached double-digit interceptions, it's important to note how common interceptions were back then compared to today. Of course, back in the 20th century, double-digit picks were an accomplishment, but it still happened just about every year, even when they played fewer games. In comparison, Diggs is the first player to reach 11 this century. It's a bit like Dan Marino's 48 touchdowns in 1984. Sure, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, and Patrick Mahomes have passed that mark since then, but when you consider the era, Marino's records will always be the most meaningful. So what Diggs is doing right now, that sure is an outlier. When you bring up the other things, you would start with the fact that all his plays that ended in an interception are still an extremely small sample size of his overall play. You could pick almost any player in the NFL and show their top 11 plays of the season and they would look like an all-pro. So when evaluating Diggs, it's stupid to judge him solely based off his interception total, and that goes for anyone. And the same goes for edge rushers and sacks. Diggs has allowed the 10th most receptions in the league. He allows a catch more than half the time he's targeted. And he leads the league in yards allowed with 962 yards and 5 touchdowns. Which pretty much means if you were to put a receiver on Diggs for every snap this season, then that receiver would be having a pretty good season. There's a reason why quarterbacks continue to target Diggs even with the extra risk of getting picked off. It's because more than half the time it's going to be a completion for the offense. But you could also spin this the other way, and that's if a quarterback is throwing 1-point-something picks per 100 yards, then that would be terrible. This is where the Jameis Winston 30 touchdown, 30 interception season comparison comes into play. Diggs has been called the Winston of defense for his boomer bust style. I know it's a funny comparison that has some sense to it, but let's be honest, it's a bit unfair to Diggs. Neither player is perfect, but Diggs at a younger age already has more elite parts to his game than Winston will ever have. And that's coming from a guy who was high on Winston working with Sean Payton. 11 interceptions in today's NFL is already more impressive than 30 touchdowns, which has become a stat line produced every year. year. The comparison would actually be better if Winston threw for like 50 or 60 touchdowns that year. Anyway, the question that's worth evaluating is how valuable are the interceptions to a potential win versus the yards surrendered toward a potential loss. If you're into a stat like expected points added, otherwise known as EPA, then Diggs has been a leader in that all year, because obviously EPA values his turnovers greatly. When you think about how good the Cowboys offense can be, and you're giving them another possession, that's extremely valuable. Good championship DNA in today's NFL is a top-tier offense and a playmaking defense. The Cowboys got both those boxes checked, and Diggs is a big reason why. Also gotta hand it to other playmakers on their defense like Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. That's why Dallas leads the NFL in turnovers this year. Diggs has also been criticized for playing poorly against the run, but obviously you're not going to base what you think about a corner on the run game. Another factor when considering his yards allowed is the play of safety DeMonte KZ. Of course, every corner has somewhat of an excuse when the safety fails to give them proper help, but there are quite a few plays I've seen this year where KZ messes up on his angles or timing. Cowboys fans are going to strongly point to one part of this video, and others are going to point to the other side. I just kind of find it fascinating that a corner has captured such a complicated viewpoint for fans. Of course, the truth will always lie somewhere in the middle. Diggs isn't a lockdown corner. He isn't putting people on an island like Darrelle Revis. But he certainly is one of the best ball hawks the league will see for some time. And the best part of it all? He's only in his second year in the NFL. There's plenty of time for improvement and opportunity. At times, Diggs has given us a glimpse perhaps of the future when his ball hawking lands on an island. There's plenty of time for him to reach his full potential, and that's a Defensive Player of the Year. So sure, it's not time to hand him the award right now. You can't be a Defensive Player of the Year when there's a better candidate on your own team in Parsons, but I'm excited to watch Diggs continue to develop because he's already one of the league's most exciting players. Also, I gotta mention while we're on the subject of corners that AJ Terrell for the Falcons, him not making the Pro Bowl is a shame because he's become one of the most underrated players in the league. He deserves a video of his own, but I just want to get my thoughts out on Diggs today. As always, thank you for
intercepted. Thanks for watching.